And I'm delighted to say that George Christensen joins me now. Now, George, you've raised some startling figures in your recent speech. It is about how Christians are the most persecuted religious people in the world, and that there's a big section of them that are persecuted here in Australia. How do we compare with some of the more egregious offences that are happening to Christians around the world?
Well, obviously in Australia we don't have the kind of persecution you're seeing in a lot of places that sadly are mainly majority Muslim countries, or countries that are approaching majority Muslim, and also communist countries. And that's where the problem for Christians across the world is happening. Statistics that I have seen, and they're very, very difficult to get an absolute handle on, but upwards of 2.4 million Christians that have been killed in very recent times for their faith, and we've got scores more that are actually, or millions more actually, that are have been persecuted, oppressed, tortured, victimised in some way. In fact, estimates out there are 1 in 8 Christians around the world have been subjected to some form of persecution or oppression, and we think, how can that be so? Well, that's because we live in the Western world, and in the Western world there's a different type of oppression and persecution going on, but in the non-Western world, in communist countries, majority Muslim countries, they are going through real victimhood where people are being killed.
And we see that, George, in China with the Uyghurs, where they're even though they're not Christians, they're Muslims, but we do see religious oppression in all of these places. But jump into Australia for a moment, right? We're removed because we are part of the West and we're an enlightened society, but Christians here are still being persecuted for their faith. And this was one of the promises, I think, of the Morrison government, who had to pick up the remnants of the Turnbull promises, and about protecting religious liberty, particularly in the workplace. What needs to be done in this space, do you think?
Well, without a doubt, there is a form of Western oppression that's going on, and we aren't truly a free society when it comes to religious liberty or freedom of faith, Corey. I mean, and we haven't been for a long while. The fact that we had a Catholic Archbishop in Julian Porteous in this country who dared to send out Catholic church teaching to Catholic school students on marriage. And for that crime, or alleged crime, he was hauled before an anti-discrimination tribunal. Now, the case was dropped because of a range of political reasons, but the Anti-Discrimination Commissioner in Tasmania, who was going to hear the case, actually said there was a case to be answered. There's a myriad of these cases I could point to.
Yeah. It's true. The process becomes the punishment, doesn't it, for the person who's prepared to speak up in favour of what are very mainstream processes. But come back to this. We need to do something about it. I think it's been kicked into the long grass by the former Attorney General. We've got a new Attorney General now, and maybe something will happen.
Yep.
But what do you think needs to happen to protect religious liberty, and particularly the plight of the persecuted Christians domestically and abroad?
Well, fair income religious discrimination laws, and I hate that term, religious discrimination. It should be fair income religious liberty laws. And what I mean by that is that no weasel words, Corey, no exemptions if there's offence or vilification or harassment. They're very subjective terms that you can wriggle out of. No get out of jail clauses for big corporations who can say, oh, well, there might have been some financial issue on us if we kept this Christian on because of what they were posting on social media. So there's got to be fair income laws that don't just seem to appease those out there who don't want religious freedom in this country. So that's number one. You've also asked about what to do around the world. Well, I think I'm not big on appointing more bureaucrats, but across the world we've seen the appointment of ambassadors, roving ambassadors, for an end to religious persecution. America's got one. In Hungary, I understand they've created an actual ministry to end Christian persecution. So I think that's what we could do, because we have these roving ambassadors for other issues, gender equity and the like. Let's get one in there to end the persecution against Christians and people of other faiths as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept, and I will look forward to finding out a bit more about it. But I love your terminology. No weasel words, no hurt feelings test. This is about liberty. People should be free to practice their religious beliefs in accordance with the laws of the land. And the laws of this land say there shouldn't be a state-endorsed religion, don't they? That's our constitution. We're free to believe what we want.
Absolutely.
And the battle of ideas should solve all of that. George Christensen, thank you so much for your time tonight, mate. I really appreciate it, and more strength to your arm in this space, because something needs to be done about it.